Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Calling Podcast. Let me adjust the camera a bit. There we go. So, how are you guys doing? Sorry for the delay. Sorry about the delay. I actually had to run an errand, so I was very late. So, I was supposed to start the stream at least an hour early. So, really apologize for that. So, I'm gonna wait a bit till people actually show up. Uh, by the way, if you're here, leave some comment. Again, I apologize. I know I'm very late, but as I was mentioning, I actually had to run an errand. I had to go outside for a bit, and so I came late. So I had to reset the time So really sorry about that. But yeah, let's get the show on the road. Um, let's see who's here. Is any of my mods here? Uh, can you guys leave a comment, inshallah? So yeah, so that's what happened basically. I actually originally wanted to start the stream at 7:30 Bangladesh time, but uh, things got delayed. It was raining a lot, and the roads were like completely like drowning. So I had to like run some errand. I had to go somewhere, and while I was coming back, it took a long time, so I couldn't start the stream on time. So really sorry about that. Inshallah, won't, hopefully it won't happen again. But yeah, uh, by the way, leave a comment. Give me some salams on where you're from. Let me know, inshallah. Is anyone from Discord? Let me know. We're gonna get started soon. I just hoping for more people to join, inshallah, and we're gonna get started. So basically, we're reacting to Konstantine Kisin. Konstantine Kisin, in case you guys don't know, is like a failed comedian. You know, a lot of this kind of like Zionist right wing kind of like commentators are basically, a lot of them were actually failed comedians and failed kind of like Hollywood scriptwriters. These are the people that kind of like gathered together and realized that, oh, you can make a lot of money, uh, you know basically shitting for the right wing, or the conservative side. So that's what they started doing. And I think Konstantin Kisin, I don't know if he still does like comedy shows. I think he basically stopped. He became like a full-on like political commentator. Oh, brother doctor is here. Hello, brother. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How are you? Nice to see you. That's my mod, by the way. Please keep the chat, clean, inshallah. So, yeah, regarding Konstantin Kisin, I actually watched some of his videos in the past. He's a complete idiot. Like he makes the same kind of like right wing garbage Zionist arguments. And oh, brother on the line is here. Walaikum salam, bro. Welcome to the stream. Sorry for being delayed. By the way, I wanted to start early, but anyway. So, yeah, as I was saying, if you notice regarding Konstantin Kisin is basically he's like the lighter version of Ben Shapiro. I mean, he's not that extreme, but he's still pretty bad. So recently, I think he made a video where he says that he's now off the fence as to why he thinks that Israel should commit the genocide against Palestinian. It's a video I think brother Sharif Abu Laith already made a response to, but I also wanted to make a response to it because it was such a dumb video. So he basically argues why, like, he thinks that Israel is right to commit the genocide, basically, and it's so stupid. Like he uses fallacious reasoning all the time, and the worst part is that he's trying to act like he's this kind of like smart, kind of like slick guy, like, but he's just coming off so dumb. Like he doesn't. I don't think he realizes this. So we're gonna take a look at his like rubbish video where he tries to justify genocide, and this is honestly sad because these people. I can already tell why he's doing this. He's doing it for the cash money. Brother on the line says, "Thank God you were late. I thought I was like 25 minutes late." Nah, nah, nah. I was late. I originally wanted to start earlier, but yeah. So yeah, let's get started, inshallah. We have a few people here. Hopefully, the rest will join soon. Right, let me make it a bit bigger. Here we go. So, okay, let me do full screen. Here we go. So this is the guy. This guy. He's I mean, he does. He basically shoots for the right wing, and he's been kind of like attacking the pro-Palestinians for a while. He's been debating Palestinians and whatnot, and now he's claiming that he's off the fence. But as you'll see, he was never on the fence in the first place. Brother Douglas, I love you, brother. Yeah, me too, bro. No. Anyway, so yeah, so let's see what he says regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I'll make my response. Inshallah. By the way, let me know if the sound is all right. And yeah, let's get started. We put the speed at 1.5. All right, we're good. All right, let's go. Bismillah. Oh, I didn't play the intro yet. Sorry about that. Let me play the intro. Here we go. All right, we are back. We are back. All right. Okay, so let's get started, inshallah. Let's not waste any more time. Oh, where did all the people go? There are like 0 ones watching. Uh, Maybe it's like YouTube sometimes glitches out, maybe. But anyway, so yeah, let's continue. All right, let's get started. Bismillah.
I'm off the fence about Israel's war. Here's why. Exactly a year ago, when thousands of Hamas militants crossed Israel's border to engage in an orgy of medieval violence, I knew little about Israel and had no opinion about the long-running conflict there. I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Gaza. I've never been to the West Bank. It's not a conflict I studied at university or read about extensively. People on both sides who care passionately about this issue find it hard to believe.
So basically, he again like starts the video with one-sided argument. You can clearly see because he says that, oh, on October 7, I didn't know anything about Israel or Palestine. I was just sitting on my chair, drinking cereals. Like, the thing is that everyone at least have some idea regarding what's happening in Israel Palestine. Like, you don't have to like do like some extensive research on it. Just do like 5 minutes of research and you can find at least the basics about it. But yeah, so he starts the whole thing in a very dishonest way. He's again like says that, oh, on October 7, that's when this whole horrible terrorist attack happened. But before October 7, again, like, these people are so dishonest. They don't mention what happened before October 7, right? I mean, like, there's this human rights organization. They are called Jewish Voice for Peace. They actually made a chart. Jewish Voice for Peace. They made a chart on all the events that led up to October 7. To October 7. If you look at the chart, countdown to the genocide, the year before October 7, there we go. This is in Jewish Voice for Peace. Hold on, let me share it with you guys. You guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's in the wire. Jewish Voice for Peace. That's the website. It's a human rights website. By the way, these are Jewish people that are that basically tries to raise awareness for the Palestinians. Let me bookmark this actually. Oh, actually, I already have a lot of. All right. Yeah. So let's see what happened before the year on October 7. So November 2, 2022, Netanyahu comes to power. March 1, 2023. This is the year right before the Hora pogrom. Hundreds of Palestinians in the occupied West Bank are injured by mobs of armed Israeli settlers who burn Palestinian homes to the ground and light vehicles on fire. So, hmm, I wonder what could have happened to to springboard October 7. Clearly nothing happened, right? Like these people are so dishonest. Like clearly these news, like they don't talk about this news. Like all the things happen. Like there was literally a pogrom where basically Israelis were going around setting people's Palestinian homes on fire. Like these are settlers, by the way, they're not soldiers, right? A lot of people were injured, I believe. Hold on, yeah, I think is this one. Let me share the screen. How many people were injured, so that you guys can see. This is known as the Hura pogrom. Last Sunday, in the occupied West Bank, we saw the inevitable outcome of Zionism, a form of Jewish nationalism, that the primary political ideology to drive establishment of Israel. Israeli settlers destroyed Palestinian homes, livelihood, and lives in the worst settler attack in decade. Nearly 300 Israeli settlers rampaged through the Palestinian villages in Hura, Zataria, and Buran, burning homes to the ground, lighting vehicles on fire, and injuring 350 Palestinians. So this happened right before October 7th, you know. So and these people are like, oh, I don't know, these terrorists they just went around attacking innocent Israelis, right? And Israel did nothing. So that's one thing. But let's continue reading and see what else happened. On March 8, 2023, the quiet racist part out loud. And this is how the politicians reacted to this, the Israeli politicians. A top official in the Israeli government, Bestel Smotrich, calls for the destruction of Palestinian villages in Hura. But Smotrich is simply saying out the long-standing de facto Israeli government policy. So this is what he said. Uh, Wiped out. I think the state of Israel should do it, not God forbid private individuals. So, so basically, what he's saying is that it's not like the settlers should not burn Palestinian homes. The Israeli army should do that. That's his goal. He's literally saying it out loud, and these people, I wonder why October 7 happened. Right? Gee, I wonder why it happened. Oh my God, such a mystery. Anyway, let me show you guys the article regarding what he actually said. Yeah, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich is a racist who wants Palestinians dead. Uh, Many Zionists who have public belief that Smotrich is a bad apple and that his genocidal incitement is an exception to Israel supposed democratic values. But Smotrich is simply saying our de facto Israeli government policy try to wipe off Palestinians off the map. So basically, he basically made a statement where he said that he thinks that the Hura village should be wiped out, and it's the Israeli army that should do it. But let's continue. Let's see what else happened. Um, Here we go. Sorry, not this one. This one. Yeah. So, and then on June 21, 2023, Israeli settlement expansion. The Israeli cabinet gives Bezalel Smotrich sole power to construct 4,500 new illegal settlements on Palestinian lands. By the way, this is a complete violation of international law. The next day, the Israeli military murdered 6 Palestinians. The timing is of no coincidence, right? Then on June 28, 2023, 5 days of pogrom. Gangs of armed settlers, encouraged by officials like Smotrich and shielded by the Israeli military, carry out 5 days of pogroms and on over dozens of Palestinian villages. So, by the way, in case you guys don't know, pogrom basically means when they basically set uh, villages on fire. That's what pogrom means. So basically, it's like an kind of like a massacre of ethnic groups. So yeah, they did that again, and this happened for 5 days. By the way, they were on rampage for 5 days. Then on 7, 2023, the largest raid in the West Bank in 20 years. By the way, please note that in West Bank, they have no authority, right? They cannot put any kind of force, political or military wise, on the occupants, sorry, on the civilians in West Bank. They have no authority to do this. So all of this that's happening, this is all terrorist attack. Then you have the largest raid in the West Bank in 20 years. The Israeli army launches the largest raid in West Bank city for over 20 years. It raided Jenin hospital, bombed Jenin refugee camp, and shot a journalist. All the war crimes. So basically, they basically attacked Jenin refugee camp even before like October, like start the war started. Uh, the world is running without ideals. Yeah, exactly. And let me share it with you guys so you guys can see how they attacked Jenin refugee camp. Over the last several decades, Israeli forces carried out the largest raid in the West Bank 20 years, causing widespread destruction. Uh, the details of this attack qualify as a war crime under international law. It's bombing, so it doesn't give. Okay, here we go. Israeli forces also bombed the Jenin Freedom Theater, where Palestinians were taking shelter from brutal assault and cut off water and electricity for much of the camp and the city. The Israeli military murdered at least 12 Palestinians, including 5 children, and their violence forced thousands of people to evacuate. Yeah, so this is this is going on before October 7th. Right? This is going on before October 7th. But the Western media, of course, doesn't report this, doesn't talk about this. These kind of like Zionist apologetics, they don't mention any of this, right? They always start on October 7th. By the way, the reason I'm doing this is because it's important to lay the context, right? Then on August 23, 2023, collective punishment is a crime against humanity. Following the shootings at Hura and Hebron that left 3 Israeli dead, Israeli forces conducted a campaign of collective punishment of Palestinians. The military launched raids on a number of Palestinian villages, injuring 112 Palestinians. Israeli settlers carried out a wave of revenge attacks. So basically, they were fighting and they took revenge. Then Netanyahu visits the U.S. Then on October 7th, the bloodshed begins. So all of this happened before October 7th. So when this clown says that, oh, it started on October 7th, no, it didn't. Definitely didn't. But let's continue.
This. That's why, for many months after the October 7th attacks, I avoided commenting on the war or even discussing it on our show. Instead, I read, watched, and listened to the endless commentary, debates, and discussions to understand what people on various sides were saying. Having gathered those perspectives, I then did my best to apply first principles thinking to the arguments I heard. Thinking from first principles means stripping whatever you're trying to analyze down to its core and working back from there. Context is extremely important to understanding. But when it comes to highly emotive situations like this one, people often flood you with emotional context, which does not support the argument they're actually making. There are some obvious.
So basically, he's acting like the Palestinians are the ones who's being emotional, when in reality, it's the Zionists that are acting like they're the biggest victim on the planet. You know, like we're not the one being emotional. You're the one who's being emotional about a group of about an army that's literally committing a genocide, right? Like also, this is false. What he's saying is completely false. Brother Andolon says, waiting for Hasbara's bots to come back to completely ignore all the evidence and just scream anti-Semite. I like to laugh at them. Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't come yet. I think they will. But anyway, so yeah. By the way, what's interesting is that Political Alchemy, which is a channel run by brother Sharif Abu Laith, he actually exposed him on this, right? So he's claiming here that, oh, he never took the sides of like Israelis before because he didn't know. He didn't know this is false. This is false. And brother Sharif Abu Laith actually exposed him on this. So let's see his video a little bit, where he basically exposed him on this. Here. So let's take a look.
You give the impression that you were on the fence. And so recently, through educating yourself about the Israel-Gaza conflict and first principle thinking, you came to an undeniable logical fact that you should support.
By the way, definitely check out his channel. Subscribe to his channel. He does like good political commentary. And also, I also know him I think we don't talk anymore. But I was in a group in the same group that he was in. So yeah, definitely check out his channel.
Israel.
In summary, I've engaged with an open mind and in good faith with all the anti-Israel arguments presented to me over the last year. On balance, I regard them as disingenuous, irrelevant, and designed to pull at my heartstrings in order to obscure the harsh reality of this conflict. We would respond exactly the way that Israel has.
Now, it's obvious you were never really on the fence, particularly when your research simply reiterates Zionist talking points. There's really nothing new in what you've actually said. In fact, also, as far back as the 5th of December 2023, you were making pretty much similar arguments with Piers Morgan on his show.
Well, yes, I think I am right, Piers. But also the other thing I would say is I share the moral quandary that you were talking about with Neil Ferguson earlier. Nobody can look at the pictures of what we're seeing from Gaza and be in any way happy about what is happening. But I think if we're being honest, let's look at what the Allies, Britain and the Americans did during the last year.
Yeah, so he was defending Israel long before this video, like, and he's claiming that, oh, he was on the fence. He was on the fence. Yeah, right. Such a lying sack of shit. But anyway, and it's not just this video, by the way, where he defends Israel. There's another video, I don't know if you guys remember, where I basically reacted to this, and he basically interviewed Sam Harris. You guys remember that video? I think it came out right after October 7th. Right? He interviewed Sam Harris, and Sam Harris basically, basically defends the worst kind of and makes the worst genocidal arguments he could make. And I also reacted to this, and he was just nodding along. And on the only response he has that, oh, but we don't want civilians dead, But he doesn't say that the reason the Israelis are fighting Palestinians itself is wrong. He doesn't mention that. He doesn't mention the fact that they were occupied, right? So let me see if I can find the interview. Sam Harris, Konstantine clip. Okay. No, it's not this one. Okay. Okay, it's this one. Yeah, it's this video. Let me share it with you guys. Here we go. Yeah, you see this video? This was 2 years ago. This is 2 years ago. Wait, no, sorry, it's not this one. Where's that video? Hold on. Okay, here it is. This is 1 year ago. Okay, sorry about that. Here's the actual video. Yeah, so here basically he he basically defends. So let's take a look at some of it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let me speed it up. And by the way, this happened a year ago, and this happened when 2 weeks ago. So let's see how much he was on the fence. He claims that he was on the fence. Oh, he's so much on the fence. Let's see how much on the fence he was.
Works is neither Francis or I pretend to be experts. We ask the questions that are on the minds of most people, or at least we try. I think the questions that are on the minds of most people now is that we are in a moral quandary because we simultaneously believe many things about Israel and Palestine that are incompatible. And I'll give you a list. I don't want innocent civilians to die, and Israel has to destroy Hamas. These two are already into.
So yeah, he was already claiming Israel has to destroy Hamas. So how are you on the fence? How are you on the fence if you already decided which party should be destroyed? Oh, I'm on the fence about the war, but I definitely think this one party should be destroyed. And then how are you on the fence? Like, if you're on the fence, like being on the fence would imply that somehow you don't know which side to pick. Like that would be on the fence. Like you already picking a side and then saying that, oh, I don't want civilians to die. That's not being on the fence, right? So here, even from the beginning, like he was just like already on the Israeli side. So how was he on the fence? So he's lying. He's lying.
It's only contradictory. And we can keep going further and further into exploring that. But what I see is that the thing that is right to say on social media, to look smart and sophisticated and balanced and nuanced, is impractical. It puts you in a position where you don't know what to do. So how do we think about this? How do we think about this issue, Sam?
Well, I'm not saying anything on social media.
obviously, Sam Harris is a lunatic, so we're not going to listen to that. And this happened a year ago. What a loser. Like, such a liar. But anyway, But a good job on Badr Sharif Abulait to actually expose that. And also check out that video. Like he's such a liar. But anyway, let's continue. On the fence.
examples in this debate, which we will address shortly. First principles thinking helps you see the structure of arguments. The logic of an argument is like the skeleton of a body. You cannot see it from the outside, but it is usually the cause of why the body moves the way that it does. Getting to the skeleton of an argument is essential to understanding it. This was my approach when we had prominent pro-Palestine guests like Bassem Youssef and Norman Finkelstein on trigonometry, as well as pro-Israel guests like Ben Shapiro and Natasha Hausdorff. It was also my approach when I hosted a fiery debate on the subject at Dissident Dialogues, and when Safety Namus invited me to discuss this issue on this podcast. So what does first principle thinking tell us about the conflict? First, the easiest way to understand a complicated problem is to find a comparable situation about which you already know what to think. For example,
By the way, that's not first principle thinking. Like he doesn't know what first principle is. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look and let's see what first principle actually is. Um, let's see. What is first principle thinking? All right. Let's see if I can find. So, so let's take a look. Um, First principle. Philosophy. Uh, okay, here we go. Let's take a look at what first principle is. In philosophy and science, a first principle is a basic proposition or assumption that cannot be deduced from any other proposition or assumption. So basically, this type of ideas are axioms, right? Like the things that you already assume to be true, right? Brother Andalon says what he's basically saying here is that Israel should not kill civilians, but should destroy Hamas, which means it's gonna kill civilians. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I already reacted to that video, that particular video, but the reason I showed that is to show that this guy was never on the fence. He's just he's a charlatan. He's just basically doing this for money and clout. You can clearly tell because he was never on the fence. He's already on the Israeli side. But yeah, so in philosophy science, as you guys can see, first principle is basically a kind of assumption that basically that is axiomatic, right? Like for example, there are certain things that we don't question, right? We don't question certain things. Like in logic, there are certain basic principles. For example, the idea that I exist, right? It's a basic principle in logic. Or the idea that the world exists is like a basic principle. Like we don't question these things, right? Or like for example, as a Muslim, for me, the fact that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala exists, right? It's the like these things are foundational, right? So basically, it's like a foundation of logic, right? That's what first principle is, right? But he says that first principles is basically comparing one situation with another situation. That's not first principle. So like he just goes completely off the rails right at the beginning. But yeah, let's continue.
conflict. First, the easiest way to understand a complicated problem is to find a comparable situation about which you already know what to think. For example, if we accept that October 7th was a terrorist attack, as I believe most people do, the obvious approach is about the conflict. First, the easiest way to understand a complicated problem is to find a comparable situation about which you invited me to discuss this issue on this podcast. So what does first principle thinking tell us about the conflict? First, the easiest way to understand a complicated problem is to find a
What a toll. Yeah, exactly.
comparable situation about which you already know what to think. For example, if we accept that October 7th was a terrorist attack, as I believe most people do, the obvious
No, most people don't think October 7th was a terrorist attack, including myself. But see, this is the thing. This is where he goes wrong. Like he tries to define the first principle as anyone who thinks that what happened on October 7th is already a terrorist attack. When in reality, we know for a fact that's not a terrorist attack. It was a retaliation. It was a retaliation because of what happened to the year prior, as I just showed. All the pogroms that happened, all the bombings that happened in Jenin refugee camps. even before the war, right? So, and he ignores all this. So basically, here he's committing the cherry picking fallacy. Let me show you guys the. Here we go. Yeah, he's cherry picking. So yeah, so basically, what he's doing is he's being selective on how he uses evidence, and he's only using October 7 and not showing anything prior to October 7 to make it seem like somehow October 7 it was a terrorist attack. Because the thing is that if this is really the case, that before October 7, Israel has done countless attacks, just like or Israeli illegal settlers have done countless attacks that are similar to October 7, then October 7 is no longer a terrorist attack. It's simply a retaliation, right? So, but because he doesn't show that, his conclusion doesn't logically follow, right? So it's a fallacy. He's simply cherry picking incidents where the Israelis were attacked, but he's not showing incidents where Palestinians were attacked before October 7, right? And this is how he's coming to the conclusion, so-called first principle, that it was a terrorist attack. When in reality, we know for a fact it's not a terrorist attack; it's a retaliation. But let's continue.
This approach would be to compare
This guy's so stupid. Like, anyway.
it to other terrorist attacks in recent history. That, as it happens, is impossible because on the proportion of
By the way, this is nothing to do with a first principle. First principle would be something like no harm principle, right? Like saying that, okay, I as a foundational belief, I believe that no one should be harmed, right? That's something I can get behind on, right? That would be a valid first principle. Or the idea that man and woman should have equal rights, like the first principle for feminism would be that, right? But he's not explaining his first principle. He's just saying, oh, the first principle is the October 7 was a terrorist attack, and was there a similar event that happened or not? And that's not first principle. So this is bizarre. He doesn't even know what first principle is.
basis, the Western world has never experienced an attack on this scale. If we take 9/11, the most impactful terrorist attack in living memory, which shook the world's dominant superpower to its very core, we see that 2,977 people were killed in a country of 285 million people. On October 7th, approximately 1,200 people were killed in a country of just 9 million people. Some keep calling October 7th Israel's 9/11. That isn't remotely true. If October 7th was Israel 9/11, on a per capita basis, only 100 people would have been killed. In other words, October 7th was at least 12 times as bad as 9/11. And that's before accounting for the fact.
Like this guy is so dishonest. So basically, he's taking the data of a small country, which is a very small population, right? Which is like like 3 million or something. The Israeli population. So basically, he's taking a very small country and comparing it with a massive country like America, and saying that, oh, look at the impact that they have. Their impact is so much greater because it's such a small country. Yeah, no shit. like the thing is that if you attack 50 people out of 100 people, and then you attack 50 people out of 1,000 people, of course, if you do a ratio, the 50 people to 100 people ratio-wise would seem greater. But you're being dishonest when you present the data, because the thing is that you're taking a sample, you're taking from a small sample, right? And also, this same logic applies to the Palestinians. Like, what happened, like nearly 40,000 Palestinians have been killed, which is like 100 times the 9/11 that America had, and 100 times the October 7. So why don't you talk about that? And why doesn't that logic apply to the Palestinians? Like, this guy's so stupid. So basically, he's like, oh, look at this ratio, right? This ratio of Israelis that died compared to the Americans died in 9/11 is so much greater. Yeah, because it's a smaller population, genius. So what a low, man.
Fact that Hamas took hundreds of hostages, many of
It's like if I said, imagine if I have like one child, right? And that one child got like a plus, right? Did really well in the exam, and he passed all the exams with like A plus, right? Or A plus grade. And then you have another parent with like 5 kids, and then only one of them got A plus in all the subjects, and the rest of them didn't. Then if I compare them, of course the ratio would be of the one child would be greater than the ratio of the 5th child. right? But that's not that's a faulty comparison. You can compare the two because the context is different. The context of the Israeli side is different to the context of the American side, right? The Israelis are actually the perpetrators of a massive campaign, ethnic cleansing campaign, right? America, for the most part, they also did terrible things, but they didn't have like a concentration camp the way that Israel had, right? So the two situation is no way comparable. So basically, where this is where he's committing the faulty comparison fallacy. Let me see if I can. Here we go. Faulty comparison fallacy. Yeah, he's comparing two. He's comparing two completely different data sets that has nothing to do with each other. You know, like the American population and the Israeli population is not the same. Therefore, you cannot compare the two. No. So, and also like the context behind 9/11 and the context behind, uh, you know, what happened on October 7 is not the same. So it's just like a bizarre comparison, but let's continue.
Of whom have been killed since. So the obvious question is, if thousands of armed Mexicans had penetrated the southern border of the United States, killed 36,000 Americans, and dragged off thousands of hostages, how would America have reacted? Would there still be
Yeah, but you can apply the same logic on the Palestinians. like Palestinians were also attacked like that. All the pogroms that happened. Like, should I like bring up the uh, the countdown to genocide article again? All right, let me show here. All these events that happened, all the pogroms that happened before October 7. 300, hundreds of people were killed, where basically people's homes were burned to the ground, and hundreds of Palestinians were shot. And even before October 7, like nearly 300 Palestinians were shot. 300 Palestinians killed in 2023. Yeah, here we go. No, wait, hold on. Let me get. Okay, here we go. All right, give me a second. I have it here. Tools, anytime, custom range. So I'll just go to January and show this every time, but like it's important to show like January 2023, right before October, September 30. Yeah, go. Okay, I think it's this one. So yeah, here we go. Like for example, if you look at Relief Web, which is a human rights organization, this article came out in January, I believe, 2023. In 2022, the world saw a dramatic surge in killing of Palestinians, with fatalities in the West Bank climbing 82% from the previous year and nearly quadrupling 491%. This report, entitled "Pulling the Trigger" in the first report, Palestinians killed by Israeli army and settlers in 2022, presents a detailed account of killing of Palestinians perpetrated by the Israeli forces. along with associated context gathered from both field and office research. It contains testimonies indicating that Israel frequently acted at systematic will to disregard the most essential right found in all human rights charter, i.e., rights to life. Viewers of the year monitor. So yeah, nearly 55 Palestinians were killed. Uh, but yeah, and then there are other articles here. Basically, it accounts nearly 55 Palestinians killed. Like there's so many like research you can look at to simply debunk this. So this idea that that somehow this started in October 7 is it's a lie has been debunked. I debunked it countless times, but uh, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Yeah, let's continue, inshallah.
Be Mexico to speak of. Whatever your view of the history of this conflict, I believe the logic of this is impenetrable. However, there are some persuasive arguments from the anti.
Okay, so basically, he makes the argument that, oh, what happens if Mexico attacked, America? Yeah, the same thing happened with the Palestinians. The Palestinians were attacked first. And they've been under occupation for like 65 years. Nearly 300 Palestinians were killed before October 7. So, like, how's that different? Then you're basically justifying October 7 and what happened on October 7. And what happened on October 7 was completely justified.
Israel camp, which are aimed at contextualizing October 7th. Let's look at them. Number one, history did not start on October 7th. The crux of this argument, when broken down to its central premise, is that the state of Israel is illegitimate. In this conception, Israel was created because land belonging to Palestinians was taken by Western powers and given to European Jews fleeing the Holocaust. Palestinians were not consulted, did not give consent, and found themselves kicked out of their homes. Israel is a settler colonial state. 2. October 7th was a response to Israeli brutality and oppression. Those of you who watched my debate with Safety Namas will recall that he made this argument repeatedly. The people of Gaza and the West Bank are treated so badly, he argued, the response we saw on October 7th was totally understandable. An act of resistance aimed at redressing the wrongs they have suffered. 3. Israel is killing civilians. The scenes of parents pulling their children out of rubble speak for themselves. 4. Israel is engaged in indiscriminate attacks, which is why so many innocent people are dying. This argument...
By the way, please note what he's doing. He's basically strawmanning the argument. Here we go. This is what he's doing. He's strawmanning the argument because the argument isn't, or at least most Palestinians would not make the argument that I mean many would make this argument, but that's not the argument I would make, right? Because the thing is that here it seems to be that he's making the argument that he's trying to present the argument as only being the Palestinians were treated so badly, that's why that's why they're hitting back, or or look at what happened before October 7. But that's not the only argument. Another element of the argument is that Israelis hate Arabs. Okay, they hate Arabs. They're very racist towards Arabs, right? So an element of the reason why they might be doing this is because they always hated them, and this is an opportunity for them to completely wipe them out, right? To commit genocide. And the thing is that you don't have to look far to see this. Benjamin Netanyahu himself admitted to this when he says things like, when he quotes, I mean, look at the ICJ case, right? When they brought up his quote, where he said that, remember what Amalek has done to you. Or look at the general who says that, we're fighting human animals, and all this you can find all these quotes in the ICJ court case, right? So the actual argument would be is that they always have hatred towards the Arabs, and so October 7 gave them an opportunity to commit a proper ethnic cleansing campaign to completely wipe them out, right? That would be the actual argument. And when they say that, oh, it's because of October 7, this and that, no, we would argue that this has nothing to do with October 7. Because if this was really about October 7, then how do you explain all the death and destruction that happened before October 7, right? All the Palestinians that were shot down before October 7, like as I just showed you guys, nearly 50 Palestinians were killed. Like this theory doesn't explain it, right? This theory definitely doesn't explain the behavior. Then on top of it, you have behavior of a very racist rabbis, and you guys can check out my previous videos on Palestine, where they're basically literally saying that they're human animals. Like these behaviors cannot be explained by this theory, right? This theory that, oh, they were just terrorists, that's why they want to kill them out. This theory is not explained. Does not explain the Israeli behavior here. The only theory that explains the Israeli behavior is the one that says that they always hated the Arabs and they want to kill all of them, or at least kick them out completely from their land. Brother Andalon says Zionist apologetic is nothing more than another name for genocidal apologetic. That's why all these Zionists just repeat the same old bad arguments. Yeah, exactly. So basically here he's just misrepresenting the actual argument, because that is the argument I would make personally. Now I know that some liberals tend to make this kind of like more like reserved arguments where they argue like, oh, Jewish people are not bad, because they don't want to seem as anti-Semite, right? That's why they don't make this argument. But this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, because many Jewish people also is against this kind of movement, right? And as a matter of fact, many Jewish pro-Palestine activists would actually agree with me, because you can see their pattern of behavior. This happened long before, like even their founding father, Ben Gurion. Ben Gurion himself planned the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and you can read about it in Ellen Pepe's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. You can see, like, he basically quoted his diary. He's known as a red diary, I believe, and you can read the diary. And he himself lays out the plan of ethnically cleansing Palestinians. So this is completely consistent with how they behave in the past. This was always the plan. Genocide was always the plan, or the ethnic cleansing was always the plan. So that's the actual argument. But of course, he's never going to address the actual argument. He's going to address the misrepresentation, or like the watered down version of it, to like seem like somehow he has a leg up. But let's continue.
Yemen aims to prove that Israel is the bad guy in this war because it is killing lots of people, either deliberately or due to a callous disregard for the lives of Palestinians. These are, to the best of my knowledge, the four principal arguments made by the anti-Israel side. If there are others, please let me know in the comments and I will address them in a follow-up video. Let's go through.
Also, it's not anti-Israel side, it's the pro-human side.
The arguments one by one. And for the sake of argument, let us accept that every point in each argument is valid and historically accurate. I know many viewers will find this objectionable, but I believe the best
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let's see your counter argument.
way to unpack this entire discussion is to take people's arguments as valid and see if they make sense.
Brother Andalon says, yeah, people like Noam Chomsky and Norman Friedman are both Jews. Yeah, exactly. Like there are a lot of even Israeli Palestinians that don't agree with this, but they're very rare, because Israeli society has gone mad. They've gone mad, basically. But a lot of people are still sane, and there are people who do support the Palestinian rights. But let's continue.
The first argument, whose central premise is that Israel is illegitimate, seems to be at the core of every debate. It feels reasonable and logical to many people to contextualize Israel's response to October 7th in this way. After all, if Israel was created through illegitimate means, it puts the discussion on an entirely different footing, doesn't it? Well, actually, no, it doesn't. Again, let's think from first principles. If we believe every pro-Palestinian claim and accept that Israel was created through the forced placement of European Jews in a foreign land by Western powers, we must look for a comparable situation in which a country was created through some form of displacement of the native population. Most of you live in such a country.
Okay.
The United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada are all the products of invasion, colonization, and brutal conquest. If you go back far enough, so is almost every other country in the world.
This is where like I basically lost my shit. I mean, he's so stupid. He's literally comparing America with like Israel. I mean, don't get me wrong. America has done terrible things, but America is no Israel. Okay. For example, here basically what he's doing is, again, he's committing the faulty comparison fallacy, right? So the Americans no longer put their native Americans, native population in a concentration camp. Like there was a war, there was a very violent past, and they have treated the Native Americans terribly. That's true. But for the most part, that war is now resolved. Like they no longer treat Native Americans as like some kind the way the Israelis treat Palestinians. Like they are not putting them in concentration camps, they are not starving them, they are not bombing them. Like they're not doing these things. So these two situations are not in any way comparable. America, for all the horrible things it did, at least tried to make up for what they did to their native population. It's not enough, someone could argue, but at least they did something. What did Israel do? They did nothing. All they did is ethnically cleanse them, ethnically cleanse Palestinians. So these situations are in no way comparable. Also, most people in America acknowledge that what happened there was wrong. Most people in Israel don't acknowledge this as something wrong. They defend genocide. So the two situations are nowhere comparable. I mean, don't get me wrong. America has done terrible things. Okay, I'm not like praising America, but if you compare America with Israel, America looks like saint. You know, so the two situations are nowhere similar. The colonization of the Western countries in the past are terrible. Don't get me wrong, but the Western countries have at least recognized that what they did in the past was wrong. Israel have never recognized it. As a matter of fact, they don't even recognize that this is a type of colonization. That's the difference. And they still continue to do this, even though even some Western countries have criticized them for it. So the two situations is not the same. Yeah, the problem is colonization that America did has sadly already been finished, and there's nothing we can do there. On the other side of the Israel colonization is ongoing. Yeah, exactly. And it's not just that it was finished. America, at least to some extent, recognized that what they did was wrong. Like it's taught in their books and their history books, right? But that doesn't exist in Israel. Israel is like this North Korea style kind of like dystopia, where no one knows what their country is actually doing. And it's funny because I actually recognize this kind of pattern because Bangladesh is actually was heading in a very similar direction, right? Where we also had this situation where we had this fascist dictator who created this atmosphere where it felt like normal civilized situations felt like alien to us, right? Basic things like free speech or like human rights, these things felt alien to us, right? And we didn't know what these things look like, right? So when a cop would like shoot a student, like, that was like completely normalized. We like already accepted it as like something normal, but it's not normal. So when it happened to such a very large extent, then all of a sudden we had to come to the terms that this is actually not normal. And the same thing is happening in this kind of like countries where Israel or America, but they're not recognizing that what's happening is actually wrong. And that's what the problem is, right? And the thing is that America, at least to some extent, have recognized their mistakes. And it doesn't make up for it. Obviously, they're still wrong, and America is still terrible. But the two countries are not the same. So yeah, he's basically committing the fault of comparison fallacy. You cannot compare America or like the Western colonization with what Israel's doing. But let's continue. On top of it, America is not like a ethnic state, like ethno-fascist state, like Israel. Israel is a country or an apartheid country. It is not anymore. Israel is a country where only Jewish people are allowed to live, or they're preferred over non-Jewish people. And it is established in their law. That's not the case in America, or at least not anymore. So comparing America or like all the other Western countries with Israel is completely stupid and illogical. But regardless, let's continue. Also, this doesn't debunk the argument that Israel have treated the Palestinians terribly, so they have the right to fight back against it. Like it doesn't debunk that argument. The thing is that you could even make the argument that America and the native population situation got resolved because America realized what they're doing is wrong, but Israel never recognized that what they're doing is wrong. So the two situations are not the same.
Like it or not, Israel exists. It's home to over 9 million people. The idea that they would, could, or should accept the destruction of what is now their country is absurd. The United States government would not tolerate missile strikes and terrorist rampages from Native American reservations. Neither would any government of any country under any circumstances.
Yeah, the difference is the Native Americans are not doing that. And America is also not putting the Native American in a concentration camp. So, like, these two situations are not the same.
Peace in the Middle East will not be achieved by attempting to undo many decades of history. The second argument centers on the idea that October 7th was a response to Israeli occupation and brutality. This, again, seems reasonable to many people. After all, what would it take for you
By the way, most people don't make this argument. It's just like some kind of tangent that people make. But it's not a very good argument to make, like, oh, they're treated horribly, that's why it's okay for them to do war crimes. No. The argument, this isn't the argument. The argument is that the the Israelis have attacked and brutalized Palestinians, and Palestinians have the legal right to defend themselves and attack back. Okay, that's the argument. And legally, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, they could say, oh, well, they committed war crimes and whatnot. So did Israel. So, like, what's the difference?
to behave the way Hamas did on October 7th? The problem with this argument is that what happened on October 7th was not an attempt to weaken Israel militarily. It was not an attempt to break Hamas militants out of Israeli jails. It was not an attempt.
Again, this is false. Let me show you guys. How many people were killed on October 7th? Okay, so where is it? Okay, so if you look at Israel's own kind of like yeah, according to Israel's own ministry, the amount of people that was killed is 800, and nearly 300 of them were like civilians. Uh, yeah, 300 people were basically part of the IDF, except here we go. I can read about this in France 24. Here it is. Israel's social security data reveals true picture of October 7 deaths. A more precise picture of October 7 attack on Israel has emerged from social security data, confirming unprecedented scale of blah, blah, blah. The final death toll from the attack is now true to be 695 Israeli civilians, including 36 children, as well as 373 security forces. 373 security forces. So when he says that, oh, that this was not an attack on security or like not an attack on their army, it's completely false. It can get debunked in like 5 minutes. You can debunk it in like 5 minutes. Let me bookmark this. Yeah. Yeah, so basically he just lied, but let's continue. Oh, brother Sufi Chronicles is here. Welcome, Salam, bro. How are you? Welcome to the stream. Let's continue.
Attack on the Israeli Defense Force. It was not a prison breakout, as some people like to describe it. Because when people break out of a prison, they don't normally head to the nearest town and start massacring women and children.
Again, this is a lie. They didn't head to the nearest town and attacking innocent people. First of all, it is a prison break because they were not allowed to leave that area. And secondly, this is a retaliation, and some civilians got killed. Like the thing is that in Israel, everyone has to serve with the military, so it's difficult to tell who is a civilian and who's not. So Hamas could easily make the argument that they didn't know which ones were civilians and which ones were not. It could be that they were all part of the IDF, right? They had no way of knowing. Now, that this doesn't justify killing unarmed people, but it is a defense you could make and say that, oh, in the heat of the moment, they couldn't realize it. So a few civilians got killed, right? Now, of course, again, like this wouldn't justify what happened, but at the same time, they use the same kind of excuse to justify Israeli atrocities. So then why can't you use the same argument on the Palestinians, on the Hamas side? Uh, brother on the other side, brother, what do you think about what's happening in Sudan? A lot of Muslims focus on Palestine, but a lot of horrible things are happening to our sister Sudan. Yeah, I've heard about Sudan. I actually I think I made a video on it, like a live stream on it, but I haven't like delved too deep into it. And I don't know too much about Sudanese politics to actually comment on it. But it is a civil war that's been going on, and a lot of atrocities are happening on Sudan. But I haven't looked into it. Inshallah, I will maybe, but I have to do more research on it before I can fully comment on it as to what's happening. Because I think the situation is a lot more complicated than what's happening in Israel and Palestine, but it's very easy to understand. So maybe inshallah I will make a video on it after I do some research.
October 7th was, by design and implementation, a terrorist attack whose purpose was to slaughter civilians.
No, it wasn't. It was a retaliation. Like, there's no evidence that Hamas intended to kill civilians. Okay, there's no evidence of this. Now, Israel tries to make it seem like, they were like leaflets and whatnot, but there's no evidence that these leaflets are actually coming from Hamas. Like, there's no evidence of this. Like, there's no court case where the Hamas side has been put on trial. So none of this is evidence. Like, this is not proven. These are accusations from the Israeli side. So unless there's like a proper trial, none of this is proven. This is a baseless assertion. Based on assertion, you cannot like commit a genocide.
Terrify Israeli society and nothing else. This was not
None of this is proven. He's just lying.
an act of resistance. It was an act of terrorism, which is why Israel had to react to it in the manner that it has, and why any other country would have done the same.
Yeah, but Israel has been doing this before October 7th. So how do you explain this? Like, again, like he's just repeating the same thing without explaining the problem. The problem is it's not that they're like doing horrible things to Palestinians after October 7th. The problem is they have always been doing horrible things to Palestinians before October 7th. So how do you explain this behavior? Right? The only thing that explains it is because, well, they hate Palestinians and they want to kill and kick them out.
The third argument is that Israel is killing civilians. This is the one claim made by the anti-Israel side that is undeniably true. However, this is an example of the emotive but irrelevant context I mentioned earlier. Civilians are always killed in war. The question is not whether they're being killed, but who bears responsibility for their deaths and who can stop the killing. Again,
Yeah, civilians are always killed, guys. People always die. People die in cancer. So why try to cure cancer? Such a stupid argument. I mean, like, imagine. So basically, here he's committing the Izot fallacy, right? So in logic, there is this problem. It's known as the Izot problem, right? So basically, the idea is just because something is the case doesn't mean it ought to be the case, right? Like, for example, if I say that it is the case that a lot of people die from accidents, car accidents, right? Therefore, it should be the case that a lot of people die from car accidents. It doesn't logically follow. Just because it is the case that a lot of people die from car accidents doesn't mean it should be the case, right? Same thing here. Just because it is the case a lot of people die in war doesn't mean it should be the case that a lot of people die in war. Also, if we accept the theory that actually this is by design and the Israelis are doing this on purpose to hurt civilians, then this argument doesn't apply there because, well, they're trying to kill civilians in the first. They were not trying to attack Hamas in the first place. They were trying to harm civilians, right? So here, basically, another fallacy he's committing is the circular reasoning fallacy. He's already assuming the Israeli side to be true, or the Israeli argument to be true, without any justification. Like, we have no reason to believe that Israel is doing this as some kind of retaliation or to make Israel safe. We have no reason to believe this. As a matter of fact, we have every reason to believe they're doing this because they want to kill and kick out all Palestinians. And the evidence for this is that they're doing this before October 7th. So it's a stupid argument. He's committing the Izot fallacy, but let's continue.
applying first principles thinking, we must reach for a comparable example. There is no exact equivalent that comes to mind, but there is some useful context we can consider. Hamas has repeatedly stated that given the opportunity, they will repeat the October 7th attacks again and again and again.
Again, like, nowhere did they say that they mean that they want to kill civilians again and again. What they're referring to is that they want to attack the military infrastructures again and again. And why is that? Again, like even if you think what happened on October 7 was bad, you can still justify it using the context. I'm not saying it's right, but you can look at the context. And the context is that they are under occupation. And they have the legal right to fight back. So if you see October 7 as a military strike, then what he said is not necessarily wrong. Like they do have the legal right to fight back. Like Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, right? So if you understand this statement from that context, it makes perfect sense, and there's nothing wrong with it. It only seems problematic if you assume that Hamas, when they said that we're going to do this again and again, if you assume that they're only talking about civilians, but we have no reason to believe that. So here he's committing the ambiguity fallacy. I don't know if I have the animation here. Where is the I don't have the animation, but yeah, basically he's using an ambiguous statement and going to a conclusion that doesn't logically follow. But let's continue.
While this may seem shocking to us in the West, it makes perfect sense given that Hamas believes Israel is illegitimate and would like to see it gone. This means
Also, like he's quoting like Hamas leadership. Like, what about the Israelis? Like, did you look at any of the things that they said? Like, they said horrible things about Palestinians. I mean, like, just look at your comment section. You know what? Let's take a look at his comment section. Um, what a breath of fresh air, especially on this day. Thanks for speaking out. Yeah, like if you just look at his comment section, this idea that actually, you know what? You don't have to look at his comment section. There's actually this video of a Palestinian interviewing Israeli soldiers. Palestinian interview IDF soldier. Let me see if I can find it. By the way, does anyone know what is the name of that channel? Soldier. So there's this video of these Palestinians who often interview. Oh, here we go. Found it. So let me share this video. This is gonna blow your mind. So I saw this video. So this is a guy that oftentimes interviews Israelis on his channel. He does it on Omi TV. Everything he goes to talks to Israelis, and look at some of the things that Israeli soldiers say. I mean, so at the beginning he basically talks to an Israeli soldier, and let's take a look and see what he says.
Free Palestine. Hello, IDF, Israeli soldier. How many Palestinians have you killed?
What?
How many Palestinians have you killed?
20?
Is this?
Look at how he's talking. He's acting as if like he killed like animals or something.
It's like real life.
I don't know what is Palestinians. I know Hamas. In Gaza, there is not civilians.
In Gaza,
Did you guys hear what he said? Let me run it back again.
is this like real life?
I don't know what is Palestinians. I know Hamas. In Gaza, there is not civilians.
In Gaza, there is not civilians. Like, he's literally saying this. The Israeli soldiers literally say things like there's no civilians in Gaza, which means that they see every single person living in Gaza as Hamas or as militant. This is disgusting. This is sick. But this is genocide. Like, this is genocidal mindset. And this is clear evidence of genocidal rhetoric. They're literally saying it out loud. They're literally saying that there is no civilian in Gaza. Yeah, he's talking as if he just ate a sandwich. I know, right? Like, he's literally admitting that they're there to commit genocide. They're there to kill civilians, not actual Hamas. They're there to kill everyone. He's admitting this.
In Gaza,
All Hamas.
They're all Hamas terrorists. They're all terrorists. Like, all the children that they've killed, they're all terrorists, according to them. And it makes sense, right? And I think this is the command that they have. according to them and their ideology, their messed up, effed up ideology, they think that everyone in Israel is Hamas. And I think this is what they're telling their soldiers. And their soldiers, this is why you're seeing so many high level of death count, civilian death count, is because they're not treating, they're attacking the civilians. They're not there to attack the actual Hamas fighters. That is their target. So their target is to wipe out everyone. And he's literally admitting this. I love this. like here you have this guy, like he's being this like smart ass. He's trying to he's trying to defend Israeli genocide, and here you have this moron just admitting to, yeah, we're here to commit genocide. You know.
In Gaza, there's no civilians. They're all Hamas. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 1 million kids in Gaza, they're Hamas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at his behavior. He's like, yeah, eating chocolate. So, these people.
What kind of gun did you kill them with? Hello, where are you from?
From Israel.
I'm from Palestine. What are you holding?
M16. Defense ourselves from the birds.
You guys kill Palestinian
Look at what he's asking. He's saying, did you kill children?
kids?
Yeah.
And they're saying, yeah, they shot kids. They shot kids. They shot children.
Just 2 this morning. Just 2. Yesterday was a good day.
Only.
Really?
Have a nice day, guy.
So yeah, imagine telling a Palestinian that we're killing your children, right? Disgusting piece of shit. And this is what this guy is defending. Like, I love how he like quotes Hamas leadership as saying that we're going to do this over and over again, and he doesn't give it any context. And then you have actual Israeli soldiers admitting that they're there to commit genocide. Somehow that's fine, but when Hamas says that we want to, like, even if I accept his proposition that this is like they're talking about like killing both civilians and like militants, let's assume that's bad. Then why isn't Israeli side bad the same way? So yeah, so basically he's quoting or misquoting the Hamas leadership as saying that, oh, we're going to do it over and over again, when in reality what he's referring to is he's going to do a military strike over and over again, a successful military strike over and over again, because nowhere did he say that he's going to kill civilians. Because if you look at the ratio, Hamas actually killed less civilians than IDF, right? So that's what he's referring to. Then he's misrepresenting it and saying that, oh, he's talking about killing civilians, so it's okay to commit genocide. And here you have Israeli soldiers that are literally admitting that they want to commit genocide. Yeah, on the line said just 2 kids this morning. That's satanic. Yeah, I know, right? Well, let's continue.
It means that unless Israel destroys or degrades their ability to carry out their threats, it is likely to experience more terrorist attacks again and again. Does anyone seriously believe that any government of any country...
By the way, this is false. There's no evidence of this. Like, this is fear-mongering, right? And this is how they justify genocide. They'll say that, oh, they're just ultimately evil, and they just hate Jews, and that's why they're doing this, and they're going to do it over and over again. There's no evidence of this. Because not every, like, even if this Hamas leader did say this, that doesn't mean that all of Hamas leadership agrees with this. This doesn't mean all of Palestinians agrees with this. So here again, like, he's committing history generalization. He's just generalizing an entire population.
anywhere in the world would or could react to something like 12 9/11s in one day and the threat of more to follow.
12 9/11s the same way. Like nearly 2,000, like 40,000 people were killed, and he's talking about that's like 100 9/11s. Well, I think these statements are just rhetoric. I don't think Hamas really wants to attack Israel over and over again. Yeah, I mean, it's not even rhetoric. Like it's simply they're saying that they're going to do a military strike against their occupiers. That's completely legal. There's nothing illegal about it. Like, he didn't say that he's going to attack civilians over and over again. That's not what he said. Like he's not saying that he's going to do 9/11 over and over again, because on October 7, many military was also killed. So if you look at the context, you cannot come to the conclusion that he's referring to only military or only civilians. It's an ambiguous statement, So you cannot go to the conclusion that, he's talking about killing civilians.
As many times as possible with anything other than all-out war? And who can end the killing? Well, theoretically, Israel could, of course, but for the reason we just discussed, they can't, won't, and shouldn't. That leaves Hamas.
What? The guy who's shooting, pulling the trigger can't stop himself. You know, they have to kill kids, guys.
Who could have returned the hostages and surrendered the people who took them. What is more,
Yeah, it's like shooting a victim, and then blaming the victim and saying that if the victim wasn't so irritating, I wouldn't have shot him. That's what he's saying. That's his defense.
or they could hide their civilians in the vast network of tunnels they've built to reduce casualties. Instead, they refuse
Oh,
to build
no,
bomb
not the
shelters and do
tunnel.
everything they can to maximize civilian casualties. That's not my opinion. It's something Hamas are themselves proud of. A senior spokesman for the group, Sami Abu Zuhri, gave an interview on Palestinian station Al-Aqsa TV the last time this conflict flared up. The policy of people confronting Israeli warplanes with their bare chests in order to protect their homes has proven effective against the occupation, he said. We in Hamas call upon our people to adopt this policy in order to protect Palestinian homes.
I mean, just look at the insane logic he's using. He's saying that, oh, you know, look at this Palestinian leadership. He's saying that if you go in front of a tank and pull yourself in front of a tank, they're not going to shoot you. That's the idea, right? And you shouldn't. You shouldn't shoot a person who's standing in front of you, in front of a gun. The whole point of doing that is that you don't shoot people, like you don't destroy people's home. That's what he's referring to. And he's saying that, oh, but this means that he's telling them to kill themselves. No, like this is a complete straw man. Like he's saying that, oh, you know, because the thing is that it's like, imagine this, right? Imagine you have a bunch of people in front of a car, and you have this car driver. He ran over those people, and then the police gets him, and the police asks him, hey, why did you ran over all those innocent people? And then he's like, well, these people were really irritating. I mean, if these people did not come in front of my car, I wouldn't have killed them. I would have just drove by. Like it's their fault. Look at this logic. Like, look at this idiot. Like, I love how he's like speaking with so much confidence too. Like, let's continue.
So yes, the deaths of civilians are tragic, and in a modern world where you can fill your social media feed with gruesome footage, that tragedy can be broadcast straight into your home 24/7. But the responsibility for their deaths is entirely with Hamas, and the failure to put a stop to the killing is theirs and theirs alone. Which,
Yeah, the victim is guilty. It's the victim's fault. Like if a person is shot in the head and in the chest, and he somehow survives, it's his fault that he got shot. Like, can you imagine this kind of logic being applied in like an actual court? Like people will laugh, and he thinks that this is like some kind of brilliant response. Like these people are insane.
brings us to the final argument. Israel's attacks are indiscriminate and designed to inflict civilian casualties. This is actually the simplest argument of the four to address because it is an empirical matter. The war in Gaza is not the first conflict in human history. We can compare the ratio of combatant to civilian deaths in this war to others. What happens when we do? Historically, urban warfare operations result in a casualty ratio of 9 civilians for every 1 enemy fighter killed. In Gaza, it is 2 to 1. In other words, despite the deliberate attempts by Hamas to increase the number of civilian casualties, Israel has been extraordinarily successful in reducing them. This doesn't mean that
Again, this is false. This is false. Because if you simply look at the ratio of civilians to army or the IDF killed in October 7, the number is a lot smaller. It's even smaller than what you have in what you have in the IDF case. Then what's wrong with October 7? Then there's nothing wrong with October 7. Like, you can justify October 7 the same way. And yet he doesn't justify October 7 this way.
there won't be incidents in which innocent Palestinians are killed, and, as in any war, there will likely
Also, the thing is that this is nothing to do with ratio. I mean, the thing is that, imagine this, right? Like, if you have 1 person out of 100 killed, and then you have one person out of 1,000 killed, then it's wrong in both cases. It doesn't matter how you try to justify it. Like, it's a murder in both cases. Like, when you have IDF snipers shooting at children, that's a war crime. And it doesn't matter if there are 100 people in that area or if there are 1,000 people in the area. It's a crime. It doesn't matter. And it's like, oh, if we have like 1 person killed in 100 people, then it's justified. Like, no. Let's continue.
Be war crimes committed by both sides. But overall, the numbers don't lie. If you need further evidence that claims of Israel's indiscriminate attacks are nonsense, just look at the way various commentators reacted to what has been dubbed Operation Grim Reaper. Thousands of Hezbollah pages were rigged with explosives and then detonated simultaneously, killing and injuring thousands of terrorists and a small number of bystanders. The pages in question were not picked at random. Israel specifically selected a batch of senior Hezbollah operatives. And still, people like Hamza Yusuf, Scotland's former First Minister, complain about Israel's indiscriminate attacks.
By the way, that's a terrorist attack because the thing is that what is terrorism? Terrorism is when you attack unarmed people, right? That is terrorism. Terrorism isn't simply attacking civilians, because the thing is that there are rules of war on how to engage. You cannot simply attack people that are unaware of like what's going on. You have to give them a chance to fight back. If you have a situation where even if you have an enemy combatant in front of you and they have no weapon, you cannot shoot them, right? You have to give them a chance to surrender, right? But so if you have a situation where you have an unarmed opponent and you just shoot that person, that can also be considered a type of crime, especially if he's with his family, right? So none of this can be justified under like any kind of like human rights setting. On top of it, when you exploding a pager, it doesn't affect just the person; it affects the people around them. And also, nearly 100 people were attacked in the pager attack. So this is false. And like, what does it even have to do with like?
This was definitionally the most precise, targeted, and surgical large-scale anti-terrorist operation in human history. In summary, I've engaged with an open mind and in good faith with all the anti-Israel arguments presented to me over the last year. On balance, I regard them as disingenuous, irrational argument. Israel's attacks.
So, by the way, regarding this argument that Israel's attack are indiscriminate, first of all, it is. And we know for a fact that it is because they're literally attacking civilians in the head, shooting them in the head. There are countless evidence of this. Now, if you're going to justify that, like there's no justifying this. Like there's no justifying this because they're literally targeting and shooting innocent civilians. And we see from the testimonies of the IDF soldiers themselves. So like how does it justify this? Like, even if it is the case that usually in war you have more civilians killed, and then in this case there were less civilians killed, that doesn't mean they're trying to minimize the number of civilian death. It just means that there are less civilians killed. Like, how does that justify what Israel is doing? Like, it doesn't justify it. Like, he's just putting out random numbers without any justification. Like, what does it prove? Like, it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove that they're not trying to kill civilians, because they are. We know for a fact they are. And if they are trying to kill civilians, then how do you justify that? And he gave no justification for this. He's just saying that, they're trying to like, there's no evidence they're actually trying to minimize the numbers. So he didn't give a proper counter response to any of this.
Are indiscriminate and designed to inflict civilian casualties. This is actually to others. Israel has been extraordinary the way various commentators reacted to what has been dubbed Operation Grim Reaper. Israel specifically selected a batch of senior operation in human history. In summary, I've engaged with an open mind and in good faith with all the anti-Israel arguments presented to me over the last
year. Yeah, these guys he's not coming in good faith. He is clearly paid by the Zionists, and he's a Zionist shill.
Like, on balance, I regard them as disingenuous, irrelevant, and designed to pull at my heartstrings in order to obscure.
Yeah, I didn't pull at any of your heartstrings. Like, this is just facts. The fact is, nearly 40,000 people, actually the number is higher. 40,000 people have been killed compared to only 1,000 people killed, right? That ratio is what actually matters. Now, if you have a situation where you have one car that is killing 100 people, and then you have another car that is not killing anyone or like killing much less people, then which car would you think is much working properly? Obviously the car that's killing less people, right? Same way, if you have a situation where like you have a car that is breaking down and causing deaths every time, and then you have a car that's not doing that, obviously you're going to try to stop the car that is causing the accidents, right? That is causing the greater harm. It's the same thing in the Israel-Palestinian situation. And again, you don't have to use any kind of emotional rhetoric for this. This is basic facts. This is basic numbers. You have 1,000 dead versus 40,000 dead. Obviously, when you have 40,000 innocent deaths, you're going to try to stop or minimize that, because that's the greater priority compared to only 1,000 people dead, right? But of course, somehow for the Zionist apologetic, having 40,000 people dead is completely justifiable, but having 1,000 people dead, it's somehow not. Like, it makes no sense. Like, none of this is justification for like the 40,000 people that have been killed. But let's continue.
The harsh reality of this conflict. We would respond exactly the way that Israel has. The only difference is we would do so with the support of every member of the
Uh, brother doctor said he's a bad person. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like when I react to like this kind of like Zionist apologetics, it's just sad, because clearly this person is doing this for the money and the clout. He basically sold his soul to the devil. Netanyahu, like I don't know like how to even describe this. Like, the thing is that you should have stayed as a comedian. Like, you should have never tried to defend this disgusting thing that's been going on. And now that you did, everyone can see what you are. You're an evil, disgusting Zionist psychopath that is defending the killing of children, defend the killing of civilians. That's what you are now. You no one's going to remember you for anything, any good you did, right? Like there's no difference between you and people of the Nazi party that was defending Holocaust. Like, it's the same thing. But I think this is the end
international
of the
community,
video.
while Israel has to fight not only the terrorists who want to wipe them off the map, but Western apologists for those terrorists as well. If you enjoy these videos,
So he says that, Israel has to fight these terrorists and their apologetics, right? No, Israel has to fight because it wants to wipe out innocent group of people. That is why they have to fight. And they're wrong. And they're not fighting. They're just killing innocent people. And what's actually happening is that people wants to stop that. And you have an issue with that.
you should know that they're available on my Substack weeks, sometimes months ahead of time. Head on over there now using the link.
So this is the first video that he did. I think he did a follow-up video. I can also react to that as well. I think he responded to like another comedian. I think he responded to another comedian. So let's take a look at that. Protesters are terrorist apologists now. Yeah, everyone is terrorist according to them. Like, it's hilarious. Like, the children that they killed is somehow terrorist. It's absurd. But let's see what else he says. So basically, someone basically made some criticism of the arguments he made, supposedly, and then he tries to make a response, but his response are even worse here. So let's take a look at what he says, and then onwards.
The article outlining my stance on Israel's war has been read more than any other that I've published on my Substack. The video based on that article has been watched more than 10 million times across various platforms. The reason it resonated, I believe, is that it was widely shared by people who felt it summarized their thoughts on the conflict. However, no piece of content reaching millions of people is ever likely to go uncriticized, especially on a controversial subject like this one. The article appears to have stirred into action comedian and commentator Dave Smith, who's most known for his libertarian and anti-war views. We've crossed swords before when we debated the issue of Ukraine. I like Konstantine, and I think he's a bright guy who hosts very interesting and thoughtful conversations.
How is he bright? He's just making the dumbest argument I've ever seen. But
just gets this issue all wrong, Dave said when posting his response to the video. Before we begin, I want to say that I like Dave too. We have different views on many things, but having debated with him, I would say that he's smart and good at breaking down complex issues, even if I often don't agree with his conclusions. The fact that he's intelligent and able to debate ideas without descending into name-calling and bad faith arguments is a huge asset, and the reason I'm responding. The other reason is that given Dave is intelligent, I actually can't believe some of the arguments he made. He starts by claiming that
shocking! What arguments did he make? His prophecy is so boring. Yeah, he sounds like a cartoon character. Did you guys watch the cartoon Ed, Ed, and Eddie? He likes one of the characters from Ed, Ed, and Eddie. Like, not Ed, Ed, and Eddie. Like, there are some cartoon characters that looks like they're just they just came from taking some drug, weed or something. That's how he looks like. He looks like one of those cartoon characters in Simpsons or else.
Said I was arguing from first principles.
By the way, this is not me like insulting him. He's the one who's like defending genocide. Like, I'm not like mocking how he looks. I'm just really mocking the way he's like defending the genocide. He's defending them like a cartoon. Like, he doesn't feel like a real person.
Was in fact just making comparisons. He defines first principles as your foundational views that aren't derived from anything else, but that you derive the rest of your arguments from. He claims I didn't explain what my first principles were. What he appears to have missed is that I spent the entire first section of the video explaining that at the heart of the debate about Israel's war is the attack on October 7th. What you think of Israel's actions is derived from what you think of October 7th and what it was. For example, if your foundational view is that it was a terrorist attack, then the rest of your arguments naturally derive from that. If, say, your foundational view is that governments have a right and responsibility to eliminate terrorists, degrade their ability to commit further acts of terrorism, and rescue hostages from their dungeons, the rest of your arguments will derive from that. How Dave missed this obvious point was initially beyond me, or when he...
So, no, he's right. I'm not him. Like, the guy that's criticizing him is right. He didn't provide any justification for any first principle. Like saying that, oh, I think that October 7 was a terrorist attack doesn't mean it is so. Like, you're simply assuming that. Like, also, that's not first principle. First principle are the basic foundations of logic. Like, for example, if you say that, oh, I believe that no one should be harmed, like that can be argued as a first principle. Or if you could argue that I think in every cases harms should be minimized. If you argue from that, then that logically follows. But if you simply say, oh, October 7 by definition is a terrorist attack, then it's a fallacious form of argumentation, because you didn't define what do you mean by that, because that needs justification. First principle is something that doesn't need justification, that most people can agree with, right? So he didn't argue from first principle. So he's absolutely right to call him out on this.
He proceeded to the next argument, my confusion abated somewhat. He explains that I was wrong to make a per capita comparison of October 7th to 9/11. If you recall, I argued that given that Israel has a population of just 9 million people, having 1,200 of them killed, hundreds more dragged off to Gaza against their will, and thousands wounded, was comparable to a much greater number of people being killed in a country of 300 million people like the US. He calls this view bizarre, before saying that my comparison is like saying you have two families, one with 4 kids, another with 2. If you kill one of their kids, it's basically the same. The problem here is that Dave has deliberately changed the maths. Imagine you had a family with 12 kids and a family with 1. Yes, the act of killing one child from each family is the same moral evil, but the impact is completely different. But this isn't the...
Again, it doesn't matter what the impact is. Like his all his whole argument is, how is it more impactful? Like if you, because the thing is that the context is not the same. The context here is that you have an occupier whose children, like, okay, here's the context. Like, let me make it easy for him. You have a situation where you have a family that is occupying another family's land, right? And they're keeping their children in the basement. Then some of those children come out and they kill some of their children, right? And then in retaliation, they kill more of their children, right? Now, in this situation, which is a greater loss? Obviously, the person who initiated the crime, which is the family that is occupied them, is in the wrong, because they're the one who initiated the crime, right? It doesn't matter, like in retaliation, they also committed a crime. It doesn't matter in that case. What matters is that they're the one who initiated the crime, initiated the first response. Same thing here. Like he's saying that, oh, so basically the guy that arguing against him is saying that, well, in this case, you have this situation where one person is killed from a family and another person is killed from a family. Well, in this both cases, it's the same thing. And he's saying that, yeah, but it's the same thing, but, the impact is greater. And the answer is that, again, like he's strawmanning the argument, because that's not the argument. They're not arguing that which impact is greater. They're arguing that you have a moral evil, and you have the right to try to stop that evil, right? So you're trying to stop anyone from dying. If you come from that first principle, then it logically follows to ask for a ceasefire. Like they're not saying that this is the case. Also, these two situations are not even the same thing, as I explained right before, because the Americans were not keeping the Taliban in a concentration camp, where the Israeli side were keeping the people of Gaza in a concentration camp, or Hamas and their people in the concentration camp. So these two situations are in no way, shape, or form similar.
The real giveaway. The reason Dave fails to understand the first principles from which I'm arguing is that his own get in the way. At the core of his argument is the idea that all people think the same. We'll see more of this later. This becomes very clear when he says that
If you're going to use this argument, which I'm saying flat out, I reject, but then why doesn't the same argument apply to the Palestinians?
this is further clarified.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can make the same argument for the Palestinians. Like if this is the case, that it's okay for Israel to do what they did because of October 7, then what about all the thousands of people that were killed before October 7? All the homes that were demolished, all the children that were killed or the thousands of people that were kidnapped before October 7th. Nearly 3,000 people, that is.
Clarified when his co-host explains,
Yeah, there's something inhumane about the proportions of death talk, which is what they keep trying to spin as the arguments with the amount of civilians that are killed to soldier ratios.
note how the argument has suddenly been twisted. We were debating whether a terrorist attack is more impactful in a smaller country than a bigger one. Now, we're
No one was arguing that. Like, no one was arguing whether or not a terrorist attack impacts more in a small country or more in a bigger country. Because the thing is that terrorist attack is the same regardless, or like where it happens. Like the thing is that the real argument here is that is this even a terrorist attack in the first place? And the answer is not. It's a retaliation. A terrorist attack implies that you only try to kill civilians, and there's no evidence of this. So his whole like so-called first principle itself is not based on any foundation. And then he's arguing from like, oh, but that means that somehow this is justified, but the other ones is not. And then so basically what they're saying is that you can make the same argument that you're making in favor of Israel on the Palestinian side, and they're right because they are under occupation, and he is acting as if like they made some kind of they somehow shifted the conversation. They didn't, because your first principles are wrong, and they're calling you out on this.
rejecting the
You're too stupid to understand this.
very concept of war itself. It's inhumane to analyze the ratio of combatants to civilians killed. By this logic, if Israel only killed Hamas fighters, they would still be committing genocide, because it's inhumane to differentiate between the deaths of rape.
No, this is straw man. Like no one argues this. No one said that.
Jihadis and those of innocent civilians. What? But since they've asked,
Wait, so is he saying that like everyone in Palestine is part of Hamas? Like, what is he saying? Like, the comedian that is criticizing him is basically saying that, look, you can make the same argument on the Palestinian side because Palestinians have also been attacked. So doesn't that then justify their attack on the Israeli side as what happened in October 7? And his response is, but like but the two situation is not the same thing, right? Because like the somehow like what is he even saying? And then he's saying that, oh, that means that, oh, you're arguing that somehow killing Hamas means killing civilians.
the reason the same argument does not apply to Palestinians is encapsulated in the term casus belli. Defined as an act or situation that provokes or justifies a war, the term has been with us for centuries because people have long recognized that, sad as war is, it is sometimes the right response. In fact, if you had to get people to agree on the
Yeah, for him, like for him and the Zionist party, the only time a war is justified is when the Jews do it, not when the Palestinians do it.
circumstances which might trigger a just war, a cross-border raid in which 1,000 people are killed,
Wait, which part of this is just war? Like in a just war, like you have legitimate reason to go to war. There's no legitimate reason to go to war, because the thing is that you're doing this before the war. Like you were doing this before October 7th.
and hundreds taken hostage would be close to top of the list. The purpose of Israel's Gaza operation is to eliminate the terrorists who attacked them, recover the hostages they took, and make sure Hamas can't carry out their threat of repeating October.
Yeah, he's just repeating the same kind of like jargon, committing what is known as a circular reasoning fallacy. Where is it? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So basically, he's just assuming what the Israeli side is saying is correct, and he's just repeating it. Like there's no substance to his argument. He's just repeating what the Israeli side is saying.
October 7th as many times as possible. The purpose of October 7th, on the other hand, was to kill, maim, rape, and torture civilians. That's
Where's the evidence for this? Like, he provides no evidence for this.
the difference. Next, Dave challenges my claim that most countries are created through the displacement of the...
So, okay, let me summarize what just happened. So basically, what he's arguing is that, the impact of what happened on Israel is greater than what happened on 9/11 in America. Well, the same argument applies on Gaza, because the impact of what's happening in Gaza is much greater than what's happening in America or even Israel. Like what's happening in Gaza is like 100 times the 9/11. Right? It's like 100 times. It's not 12 times the 9/11. It's 100 times the 9/11, because that's the amount of civilians that were killed compared to the civilians that they have, right? So it's like 100 times the the civilians that were killed. Not to mention the thousands of people that were killed before October 7th. Then by that logic, doesn't this also justify Hamas to do October 7th? Like, because they have also had civilians killed before October 7th. So by the same logic, you can justify this on the Hamas side on October 7th. And that's the question that he asked. And his response is that, well, his response is to claim that, it's a straw man somehow, because he's trying to show that the impact is greater. But even if I were to accept that impact is greater, that doesn't justify what they're doing, because they're the one who started this. And then when you have a retaliation, you kill more civilians. How does that justify that? So basically, at their side, they're basically saying that you can use the same argument on the because he used the same argument on the Palestinian side, and he's saying that no, you cannot, because because the impact is greater. How is their impact greater than Palestinians? Like, you have thousands of people killed versus only 1,000 people killed. You have nearly 40,000 people killed. Like, which of that number is greater? Obviously, the Palestinian side is greater. Especially if we compare all the deaths that happened before October 7th. So, yeah, brother on says classic Zionist bullshit. He's just repeating the exact same thing. Zionist arguments are terrible. Since the beginning of this conflict, I have newer and had one day about the Palestinian cause. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, let's continue.
The native population. For example, I asked, would the US tolerate missile strikes and terrorist rampages from Native American reservations? We wouldn't just stop bombing, he says, outraged by the mere suggestion.
So you know what would happen next? The fucking police go in and they try to find the people who did it.
This, I'm afraid, is where he lost me. Hamas, the elected government of Gaza, orchestrated October 7th using its army of...
Okay, so what? He says that, okay, if the native population did a bombing attack on America, again, he strawmans the argument, because it's the native population is not because his analogy is false. He's using the false analogy, which is fallacious. The situation is not that you have the Palestinians who's like the idea, like he started to assume that it's the Palestinians that attacked first, when in reality it's the Israelis that attacked first. They're the ones who are occupying them. Like, if you have a situation where America occupied the native population and they then first threw the first bomb, then yes, it would be completely justified. But that's not what's happening here. On 9/11, they were not occupying like the Taliban or Al Qaeda, for the matter, or even the Afghanis for the situation. Like, they still did terrible things there. Don't get me wrong, but like the two situations is nowhere similar. So his analogy is completely false when he's saying that, the Israelis committing a genocide is analogous to America responding to an attack on their soil. No, because Israel is an occupier and America is not. Like, America is no longer occupying the native population. So the analogy doesn't match, and therefore the argument doesn't logically follow. This is a moron.
We have 25,000 fighters who have multiple rocket launch systems, heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles.
Now, regarding what he said, like, if this did happen, they would send the police. And yeah, they're right. Like, imagine if in America you have a situation where you have a bunch of armed robbers that went inside a bank and that killed 1,000 people or like 600 people, then what do you do in that situation? Do you bomb the whole building, or do you try to get the hostages out? Do you try to negotiate and get the hostage out? Of course, you negotiate and you take the hostage out. But this idea that somehow you bomb everything into a solution is not a solution. And they recognize this in their own borders. But somehow that equation changes when it's outside of their borders. It's completely inconsistent. Like, why is that?
Shahab suicide drones, anti-tank mines, Cornet laser-guided anti-tank missiles, RPGs, 50 caliber.
Yeah, like you could, like let's say that you have these armed robbers, and these armed robbers also had this kind of like weaponry. Like would that equation change that? Like if you have a situation where in America you have a bunch of bank robbers that have like heavy equipments, like all of this, then in that situation, would it be justified to completely bomb the entire neighborhood in America? No, no one would do that because they're not crazy, unlike Israelis.
Sniper rifles, automatic weapons, grenades, IEDs, and booby traps. And Israel should deal with that by sending cops. Having got
Yeah, if it happened inside Israel, that is what they would do. And if this was done by Jewish people and not like Palestinians, that is exactly what they would do, right? And this actually exposes something very interesting, right? So there's an element of racism here. See, if a Palestinian outside of the border somehow attack them, they treat that incident very differently than how they would treat if a Jewish bank robber would rob a bank, right? In their own country, right? And this is something that's actually very fascinating. So here you can see clearly they're treating domestic acts of violence very differently than foreign acts of violence. But why is that? Like it doesn't logically follow. There's no reason to treat the two situations differently. Like if this is the case that when an Arab attacks your territory and you bomb their whole area, destroy the whole country, then if an American also attacks an area, your area, you should do the same in your own country. It logically follows. It's completely consistent. Like, so why can't you send the cops in the case of Israelis, or not even cops? Let's say you send the army, and you send the ground troops. Why can't you do that? See, and this is where it completely gets exposed, because they're not trying to actually save the hostages. They're actually trying to kill the civilians. That's their goal. That's why they're doing this. That's what best explains it. Because they're not trying to kill, they take the hostages out or minimize civilian casualties. Because if it happened in their own border, they would try to do that.
got this far into the 80s.
This exposes their racism. And I think the argument that the other guy made is actually quite brilliant, because he's right.
53-minute video, I gave up. Again, let me repeat, I do think Dave is smart. Some of the arguments he makes are logically sound. The problem is that he starts from bad priors, as he explains in this clip.
We're all kind of the same when it comes to this. Like after 9/11, we got hit and some innocent people got killed. And we went, you know what? You hit us, we're going to go get you. Like if you do that to us, we're going to, you think you could just kill us? We're going to go kill a whole bunch of you. And then you kind of realize it's like, yeah, that's exactly how those people who flew the buildings into the towers felt. Exactly the same way you feel right now.
This is a cognitive error called mirror image bias, well known to analysts who study other cultures. They spend years training precisely to understand that not all people are the same, nor do they act for the same reasons. As it happens, jihadis like bin Laden have been telling us why they attack us for years. We just don't listen because what they say makes us very uncomfortable. Between 20...
So wait, so is he saying that all the Palestinian kids that were killed were like jihadis like bin Laden? Like, how moronic is this guy?
2014 and 2016, ISIS published a monthly magazine called debunk.
What does ISIS has to do with Hamas? Like, what a dumb point. Like, what is he even talking about? He's lost his mind.
Issue 15 includes a short article entitled Why We Hate You and Why We Fight You. I've summarized it for brevity here.
Yeah, so basically here what he's going to do is that he's going to quote ISIS and try to make it seem like somehow that's the same as fighting Hamas, when in reality they're not the same thing. Again, here he's committing the faulty comparison fallacy. Whether he constantly does this, by the way. Here, he commits the faulty comparison fallacy. ISIS, or Islamic State, supposed Islamic State, and Hamas is not the same thing. Hamas was founded because they want to defend their own land, their own territory. ISIS was founded because they want to establish or conquer other people's territory. So these two things are not the same. Like, how stupid do you have to be to not realize this? Like, their goals are not the same. They're not the same group. Their ideas are not the same. Their foundations are not the same. So basically, the arguments he's trying to make is known as basically is that he somehow tried to make it seem like it's justified to do what they're doing to Palestinians, because like even if I were to accept that Hamas is the same as is ISIS, it still doesn't logically follow, because even in the case of ISIS, like you guys didn't like drop nukes on their territory. Like even in that case, it wouldn't be justified, right? So basically, the argument he's making that somehow it's justified to kill civilians because they're like ISIS, right? No, Hamas is not ISIS. And the thing is that even if that was the case, it would still be wrong, because you don't like bomb like hospitals. What a bizarre bizarre argument. I'll come in to a genius. Yeah, I know, right? Like he's like he's lost his plot. Like according to him, all the children that's been killed. Just a few days ago, there was a guy that was burned alive, an innocent teenager, and according to him, somehow that's the same as Al Qaeda. Like what? Uh, like the thing is that let's take a look at some of the people that were shot. Children shot by idea. So I showed this before, but I'm going to show it again. You have situations where IDF soldiers are shooting children. IDF says it completely rejects. Okay, not a normal war. Doctor says children have been targeted by Israeli snipers in Gaza, and this happened very recently. Like there's countless evidence where they're literally shooting children. Like does this children look like Bin Laden somehow? Like how are they part of Hamas? And how do you even justify this? So Allah, man. He thinks he's a great debater. He's not. Yeah, he's an idiot. But you know what? Let's finish this. It's almost been 2 hours. My throat is getting numb. Well, let's continue.
Here, but the entire article titled Why They Hate Us is available on my Substack. Here's what they say. 1. We hate you first and foremost because you are disbelieving.
Yeah, this is nothing to do with Israel-Palestine
values. As long as you're
the
with
argument.
bullets, anyone who
Blah,
called
blah,
Dave was
blah.
right all along. The people who flew the planes into the towers, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the rest, are just rightly upset at the West for its foreign policy and at Israel for its occupation. That's what.
Blah, blah,
Although some might.
So then he goes to argue against ISIS, which has nothing to do with Hamas. Like their goals are not the same. It's just got to be a straw man. Let me see if I have the where it is. There we go. That's a straw man. Straw man. Yeah, let's continue.
Argue that you're at the end
Blah blah blah.
to bring you true freedom and salvation. Click the link in the description and head on over there now.
Yeah, this guy's a moron. Anyway. So yeah, like I said, sorry if I seem a bit distraught. I just came back from outside. I had to travel all day, so I also didn't have my coffee, so I was not as my energetic self. But alhamdulillah, it's done now. So basically, his whole response basically boils down to this, which is that Israel is justified in killing civilians because somehow any Western country would do the same. And it's such a stupid argument, because just because Western countries do something doesn't make it right. So that's one thing. And then he tries to argue that the impact of October 7 is greater. Now the thing is that even if I were to accept this, that the impact of October 7 was really great and it was really bad, that doesn't justify you to commit like 100 different October 7s. Like there's no justification to shoot children in the head and starve people to death. Like there's no justification for this. It doesn't justify it, because you're not targeting Hamas. You're not targeting the people that actually that actually did the attack. So this isn't justified in any way, shape, or form. And then he somehow tries to use other kind of arguments that doesn't make any sense. Then he tries to compare ISIS with Hamas when clearly they're not the same group. Then he does all this kind of stupid and finishes argument how does why are you using bad logic to defend genocide? I don't get it. Why would you do that? I understand and the obvious reason is that is that he's getting paid. I'm pretty sure he's getting the big bucks. So It's not surprising that he's doing this, but it's just really sad because the amount of people that are being killed are mostly innocent people. And if you look at the testimony of the IDF soldiers themselves, as you guys saw in the interview, it's so clear that they're not there to fight Hamas. They're there to fight civilians. They're there to kill civilians, and you cannot justify it under any circumstances. Okay, there's no justifying that. It doesn't matter if some of the civilians attacked some civilians in Israel. It doesn't justify that then. It doesn't justify it if Hamas is the one doing it. It doesn't justify it under any circumstances. There's no justification of killing civilians. There simply isn't. Uh, brother doctor says he has no soul. His eyes are dead. Yeah, yeah. None of these people have any souls, to be honest. These people are completely soulless. They have no emotion. They're psychopathic, to be honest. And in a proper world, these people will be behind bars because they're defending a crime. They're defending killing children. Like in a civilized world, these people would be in jail, to be honest. But his arguments are very stupid and boring. It's the same thing. But anyway, I think I'm gonna end the video here. It's been nearly 2 hours. My throat is numb. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And I'm gonna do a video on my other channel after this, and then after that, I want to make a. My brother on the list says, "I'm actually surprised there are no Zionist bots." Yeah, I'm surprised too. I think they went in hiding, basically. Uh, so yeah, I'm surprised too. Like I was kind of expecting them to be here, but like, it's fine, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, I guess that's it. If you guys like the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you like the content, and if you want to support the channel, then definitely become a Patreon or YouTube member. And stay away from Zionism. And these people are fucking freaks. Sorry for the language. And yeah, I guess I'll end the stream. Thank you guys for watching. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Brother on the list says, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam, bro. Goodbye, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. I'm gonna play the outro and I'm gonna say goodbyes. Find the outro. Here we go. So, bye. Jazakallah.